Last question for me, then we'll throw it open. Just because I hate asking directors this, but just because you talked about the idea of doing something action which you hadn't done before. I mean, I've mentioned 2 other films which are coming next year, and Battle for Haditha will be released next year, Feb 29th. You'll be able to come and see it here again. Did you allow yourself to be influenced by any films at all? Did you watch films and think, well, this is something that is an interesting way of approaching this? Or did you just try and start from a completely blank page?
I mean, I think we all love Battle of Algiers, which I think it was the Pontecorvo film that was made in, I think, in '65 or something.
Recently re-released.
And recently re-released, which I think is just a fantastic film, and has the most brilliant musical score. Who was it who did it?
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd seen it recently, in fact, just before he died. He brought it here, Pontecorvo, and showed it in London, and I went and saw it again then. And I think some of those images are very, I mean, they just stay in your mind. They're so amazing, and he used real people, and so maybe, you know, that kind of film. I think probably more than anything else, if I was going to choose something.
Yeah. Good choice. Okay, let's see if we've got any questions from the audience. This is where everybody goes very shy. Anybody got any questions? They're not so shy today. What we do, we'll start at the front and then we'll work our way back. And I always forget that there are people in the balcony, but somebody's hand went up there, so we will get to you. So yes, the gentleman at the front.
Hi Nick, congratulations, I think you've made a superb film. When I was watching it, I found myself feeling a similar sort of sensation to when I watched it in 1993, not so long ago. The sense that it had this incredibly realist aesthetic, as Jason said, and had a real sort of visceral effect on me. But I also found myself asking the same sort of questions that I did of that film, which was that how could you have known? How could Paul Greengrass have known certain moments of dialogue? And I found that there seemed to be a sort of a paradox between the authenticity of realism, the way it looked, but the way that surely the filmmaker must have added onto it. I wondered, you know, do you see a similarity in the approach that you have for your film?
Well, I suppose, you know, we have a similarity of backgrounds, which is, you know, Paul worked in documentary before he went into making feature films. He actually uses one of my old cameramen, Barry Ackroyd, who I made 5 films with. So there's probably a similarity in style there too. But I think you can look at that style back to people like Peter Watkins. I don't know if you saw any of his films. Peter Watkins, he did a brilliant film called Culloden about the, you know, the Battle of Culloden, which is very much shooting in a kind of quasi-documentary style with a lot of movement and also not allowing people to talk over each other. So the cameraman is very much a person who is interpreting what's happening in a very subjective way. It's not too set up. It's not, you know, in a traditional way you would sort of block out all the shots and everybody would very carefully not talk over the top of each other. So it's a deliberate aesthetic, yeah.
Culloden's just been released on DVD.
Hasn't it?
Yeah, a few weeks ago. So yeah, so people that are interested in, and the other film that people should check out, of course, is Punishment Park. Yeah, shot by somebody else that you know.
Yeah.
Very well. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Okay. Who was next? Who was further back? There was somebody. Yep. Okay. The hand sort of half up. Yeah. No, you with the beard. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know you talked about using actors, well, using people as actors and who had actually lived through those experiences. And I was kind of interested in how the American actors and the Iraqi actors, if I'm right in saying that, what their relationship was like on set, because your films are very much about people, and these people have been through similar sort of experiences. What happened between them? What was the relationship between them?
Well, it was interesting actually. I heard that, for example, the guy who gives the instructions out about the bomb at the beginning had actually been an insurgent. And I remember when I was about to do that scene, I had these incredibly complicated instructions that I was supposed to give to somebody to describe how an IED was charged and so on. And so in the end I just said, how many people here know how to sort out an ID? And about 3 of them sort of sheepishly put their hands up, him being the main one. And later on, I heard there was an incident when he met the Marines for the first time, and when he realized that they were real Marines who had been in Fallujah, he actually grabbed one of the guys and said, you know, you killed 4 of my brothers in Fallujah, which created a very weird feeling, you know, amongst the Marines too. And that was sort of right at the beginning of the film. I think then I heard sort of comments from some of the Marines saying that, you know, the Iraqis really aren't, you know, they're kind of great guys. And they were all sort of cracking jokes together and getting on very well. And I realized that when they were in Iraq, they were so isolated, they never actually had any relationships with any Iraqi people at all. And they'd only, you know, used them, met them at roadblocks or to do house searches and that sort of thing. They never sort of sat down and cracked jokes with them. So there was a real change, I think. And I mean, Elliot was very interesting because he said, you know, I really liked a lot of the Iraqis and I wished I'd known what I know now when I've been in Iraq, because I understand so much more about them than when we were there, but we were just completely separated. So I think it was very interesting. It was a very interesting, and they obviously had very different points of view about their lives and what had happened in Iraq. And it was interesting hearing them talking to each other.
That was a really good question, actually. In terms of that, because it is based on these factual events, is there more of a pressure on you to make sure that you get it right? Because you are depicting the lives of you know, real events and real people. Does that bring an added responsibility to you?
Well, I think particularly the incident itself, we had to get absolutely right. And we got this big report, NCIS report, which had interviews with all the Marines who were there that day and the Iraqi troops who were there that day. All outlining very carefully exactly what the sergeant had done who had executed the guys by the taxi, which is all, interestingly enough, being really fudged over by the American sort of court-martial hearings, where they've sort of discounted all the Iraqi witnesses as being biased. They discounted the, you know, witness De La Cruz, who was the main witness against the sergeant, and just done a kind of whitewash job on it. But, you know, we've got all these, you know, we went to incredible care to make sure that actually everything we put in the film was accurate. And in fact, we, you know, obviously had to tone it down a great deal because it was, you know, 1,000 times more violent than what we show in the film.
Have you got time for a few more? I know everybody's come out of their show now. I'll do the person in the balcony, because I always forget the balcony, and then we'll come back down here. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought one of the things that made it feel really real was the dialogue. And I just wondered to what extent was the dialogue scripted, and how much did you let people ad-lib in scenes?
But there was a lot of ad-libbing, particularly amongst the Marines, because they had their own way of talking to each other that, you know, being an Englishman too, I would never have got it right. And so I would normally say, this is the scene about, you know, we had a script, which was actually very detailed, but I never actually handed the script out to anyone other than Elliot. And so they would know what the scene was about, but the dialogue was entirely up to them. Sometimes if I thought that the dialogue was there was too much, they were explaining too much, I'd say, look, just speak less. And I remember right at the beginning, every other word was sort of fuck or motherfucker. And I said, look, it just gets too much hearing fuck it was like a punctuation point.
It's like being in Brighton.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, otherwise it was pretty much up to them.
Okay, we do have time for 3 or 4 more questions. Time's pushing on. Okay, so put somebody near in front. Yep.
You're obviously very careful to depict the average American soldier as a victim as well as the average Iraqi civilian. I just wondered how much you felt constrained by the need to be even-handed so that the film wasn't denounced as a polemical film.
Well, you know, I think it will be denounced as a polemical film anyway, because I think the conservative right in the States is so, you know, aggressive that without even seeing the film, they're just they're going to denounce the film. I mean, I think anything that isn't seen as being 100% behind the war effort in Iraq, praising the Marines up to the gills, or could be seen